Season 2, Episode 1 of the South San Francisco podcast. This is Rich Lee, your Assistant City Manager, as well as your host. Today we have our special guest for Season 2, Episode 1, Jesus Peña, who is a member of the South San Francisco community. And we wanted to invite him on the podcast to share his story. So first, could you give a little bit of introduction about yourself and your connection to the South San Francisco community?
Yes, my name is Jesus Peña. Been living in South San Francisco for, 43 now. So been living here. My mom moved here when I was 8, and I was back and forth from the city, but came here to go to high school. Went to El Camino High School. Grew up here. Went to college. Lived here ever since in the Sunshine Gardens area, and moved to Magnolia around 2010, 2011. That's where we became familiar with the tree on the hill for my daughter. But yeah, I've been a South City resident. I say my whole life. This is where I'm from. So, yeah.
And I've been involved and affiliated with the city for since late 2013. And I remember, I think was it 2014 was the first year?
Yes, 2014 was the first year, and it got put on half. We were pushing for it, and they were able to do it through half of September. I think it got put on like September 14th that year, and ever since then it's been lit up every year.
So what we're referring to is lighting of the Sign Hill tree, and this all started with to recognize and promote Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. For South San Francisco, that really started with your daughter, Juliana. So could you share some highlights from your daughter's life and your journey to bring meaning to her journey of experiencing childhood cancer?
Juliana was born healthy. She was born in May of 2009 and was never sick or anything. And come March of 2011, she started getting very lethargic. And Kaiser, they labeled it as calling it failure to thrive, that she just wasn't thriving. And we're like, no, something else is wrong. And they kept saying, no, she's failure to thrive. We just got to push her. We got to get her more active. So we did that. We put her in a couple classes, and still she was just losing weight. You could tell like something was really bothering her. And then finally we took her in, and they did like a stool sample and a urine sample, and they find out she had blood in her urine, and in her stool she was dumping fat. But still at that point they didn't think it was what we eventually found out it was. So they made us go to Kaiser in San Francisco on Geary Street, because they're more advanced than the pediatric here in South San Francisco. So we go there, and we're in the emergency room waiting, and they decided to do an ultrasound of her stomach. And the news we got later that night was they couldn't even see her organs. There was something in her stomach that was blocking to see her organs, and they didn't know what it was. They couldn't give us a label on, they just knew it was a mass. They couldn't tell. They were hoping it was Wilms tumor, but without any testing, they couldn't tell what it was. So that same day, we're on an ambulance to Oakland, Kaiser, because that's where they do pediatric treatment and stuff like that. So we were in the emergency room there, and we had to wait. Juliana's blood pressure rose into the 200s. They had to rush her into the ICU to put an art line in her hand to try to stabilize her blood pressure. Well, come to find out, when they put her in to go do a little biopsy of the mass, come to find out it was neuroblastoma, and the reason her blood pressure was so high is because it was in her renal area, and it was smashing down on her kidney. And to get that back, we didn't know what it is. At the same time, when they went and did the biopsy, they knew that she was gonna gotta have some kind of treatment. So they put 2 Broviacs in her chest, and the Broviacs hook up to her veins to where the treatment would go through, for kids. So instead of them constantly getting poked, they have these lines where you flush and clean, and the treatment could just go up, so they don't have to constantly get poked. And since she was so small, usually one kid gets 1 port. They gave her 2 on each side, one on the right side of her chest and one on the left side of her chest. and they were telling us, they were thinking it was Wilms tumor, which has a very, very more successful survival rate of neuroblastoma. But then, like 3 days later, we came back that found out it was neuroblastoma. But hers also, it was stage 3 neuroblastoma, MNIC amplified. Now the MNIC is a different gene that's in there. Now, if it's not amplified, that's good. When it's amplified, it's not good, because when it's amplified, it just keeps remaking copies of itself. That's what's kind of hard with neuroblastoma, is that MNIC, and the stages of when you find it. When you find neuroblastoma, if you could find it in a child when they're 18 months or younger, the survival rate is very higher. But as they get older, and she was almost 3, that's considered high in age, because most kids get neuroblastoma from 5 and under. And when we found out, when we started doing the research on neuroblastoma and the MNIC amplified, you know the stats and the statistics just blow you away and scare you. But Juliana, through her treatment, she always had a smile on her face. She did 6 rounds of chemotherapy, 20 rounds of radiation, bone marrow, autologous bone marrow transplant, um, 3 surgeries. She also, from the treatment, she also had her have her front teeth pulled out before she did her bone marrow transplant, because the chemo was decaying it, and that's considered an infection. And when you do a bone marrow transplant, they take every single cell at your body. You have no cell in your body, so you're there trying to rebuild your cells to when they give you back your autologous, means they took your own bone marrow, but when they give it back to you, that's when you try to build your cells. So they give you enough chemo to wipe out every single cell in your body. And during that time, it's very hard during bone marrow transplant, because you have nothing protecting you. Juliana broke out in rashes, hives, like her body was just so red, and fevers. We got very lucky that it didn't lead to anything else. And when they gave her bone marrow back, they call it your new birthday. They call it because it's like your life is beginning again. And they hope that they cured everything and took everything out. And so that's hard. We were in the hospital for 33 days straight. In an oxygen proof room that sucks all the air, because they couldn't have anything. We had to bring stuff from home, like of hers. We had to wash it, have it in airtight bags to bring it in the room. It's all a process of going through that. You don't know what it is till you actually have to do it. Her surgery, which was also before her bone marrow transplant, when they took out the tumor, they said it was the size of a mini volleyball, the circumference of it. And she was supposed to lose her kidney. It was wrapped around her SMA artery and her kidney, and she was supposed to lose one of her kidneys. But the surgeon that we had was great. It's very scary, because when you mess with that artery, there's a chance, it's the way the blood flows, and if you're doing surgery around it, it could stop the blood flow from going in and out, and there's a big chance that you could lose someone on the operating table. The surgery lasted 4 to 6 hours. It was supposed to be 8 to 10, which is good. And when he came out, he said he got 96% of the tumor, and the 4% was necrotic tumor, meaning it was already dead. But what a lot of people don't know about neuroblastoma, that it's so very smart. It knows how to build its own DNA. So when it did come back in Juliana, that 4% of necrotic tumor, it went back and brought it back to life by building its own DNA inside of the tumor. So after she did her bone marrow transplant and resection, she did her 20 rounds of radiation, and then at that time it was a new treatment called immunotherapy, where they try these mixtures of drugs, and it's in ICU because it's very harsh. People got to remember, these aren't kid drugs. These are adult drugs. That they're giving these kids to try to kill the cancer. And on Thanksgiving of 2011, a day before, we got word from the doctor that she was NED, no evidence of disease. And we had our family over, meeting my brother and my mom, and before we sat down and ate dinner, we said a prayer and we told everybody, and everybody was so happy. Everything was going right. The sad thing is that Juliana passed away 3 months to the day of when we announced that news. We said it November 24th, 2011. She passed away February 24th, 2012. And when we started noticing signs that she was acting different again, and it's hard. And this one thing I tell people, like, you got to advocate for your kid, because just because they're doctors and they have degrees, they think, most of the time that they know it all, and they make mistakes too. At that time I could look back at it, and they made a lot of mistakes, but at the time you're going through it, you're angry, because as parents, we caught it early, and we told them, we think it's back, something's wrong, we think it's back. And they know it can't be back. She's doing immunotherapy right now. We haven't seen it come back when someone is in the immunotherapy stage. There's no way. And we're like, she's presenting the signs like she did at the beginning. Like, no, we're not, there's no way. We're like, can you test for it? No, we don't want to put her through it. Like, so finally we took her in to Kaiser in January, towards the last week of January. And she never came back home after that, because we're like, something's not right. And then they're trying all these other tests except for testing to see if it was back. And a week before she passed away, she had a MRCP, which is a higher resolution MRI. It sees a lot more. Well, they were only supposed to do like her abdomen and down. And I don't know why, but the sonographer decided to go up to her chest and her belly, higher sternum. And that's when they couldn't believe what they saw. They said it was basically in her like a wildfire. Like, it was her pancreas, her liver, her chest, everything. It metastasized. And, in that 1 week, we were at UCSF, because that's where a bone marrow transplant was at. We were at UCSF. And that Friday, when they gave us that news, during that whole week, they're like, we were having meetings of what could we do. They wanted to try radiation, but the outlook they gave us was she'd probably have 3 weeks to a month or two to live. Hearing that is devastating. But we didn't want her. She was in pain, but we didn't want her seeing us cry. Or so we'd be in the corner of the room, couldn't believe the devastating news we had. We had to be rushed to the ICU. During that week, though, things just started getting worse. You could start seeing the tumors growing out the side of her stomach, the side of her neck. Looked like she had a speed bump on her back, and she would try to smile as much as she could, and keep it strong. And a week after we got the news that it was back, she passed away on February 24th, 2012. Sorry to, I'll never forget that morning, because she was in the same position the night before, when we finally, she was in so much pain, but it's like she gave us a sign. Like, I think she knew that was it, because during that time she was in pain. She didn't want her mom Patricia laying in bed with her, which she always did. She always wanted her mom right there. And I was like a protector, and she always wanted me there. And that night, like that week, she didn't want her mom by her because she was in pain. And then she was like, "Mom, get in bed with me, get in bed." And, with her eyes barely open because she was in so much pain. And Patricia got to go in bed with her and be right there and comfort her. And then she was like, "Dad, hold me, like, like protect her." And, when we laid her down that night, I woke up around like 6 something in the morning, and I seen her in the same spot. And Patricia was sleeping. It's hard to get any rest. We're right there. And I spoke into Juliana's ear, and I told her, I said, you don't have to fight no more. I said, I'm proud of you. You did your job. You can go if you have to. And no lie, probably 30 minutes later, it started happening. She started transitioning to what it was. And, you know, the hard part as a parent, during that week, they kept asking us to sign a DNR, do not resuscitate, because they said it would be so painful to try to help her. And you know, when it started happening, the monitor started beeping, and you know that's the last thing you want to hear, because you you hear the oxygen is going out of something you love so much. And as they're beeping, the doctors come and unplug it, and me and her mom get in the bed with her, and she's laying there. And at that moment, I'm looking at all the doctors at the end of the bed, and I'm like, do something, help. But we finally signed the DNR the day before, so they just put their head down. And you know, and then I knew I needed to be in that moment. And it's like she whispered something right before she took her last breath, and her mom, me swear, she sounded like she said, I'm done. And you know, she took her last breath there, and me in her mom's hands, and we asked for the time. It was at 7:03 a.m. in the morning. It was a Friday, February 24th, 2012. And that's where my journey began, because I promised her right there on that bed that as long as I was alive, that somebody would say her name every day, that she would never be forgotten, and that I would keep her story, her memory, and everything alive. And you know, there's really nothing beautiful about death, but over on Parnassus in San Francisco, it's always foggy. You can never see the blue skies or sun. And when she passed away, it was nothing but blue skies and sun over there. It's like the gates of heaven opened up for her on that day. And as hard as it was for me and her mom, it was, you know, she didn't suffer to the end, I don't believe. You know, it sucks because children like her, they think this is what life is supposed to be, so they smile and they're strong and they're resilient. But this isn't life for our kids. It should never be acceptable, you know. But it's something that still sits with me, you know. When I relive that memory, you see me crying here. It's something I don't wish anybody ever has to go through. Or, you know, um, it was hard. It was hard because even after she passed, you know, they asked us, what do you want to do? You know, if you want her to go somewhere, she's gonna have to sit in basically the refrigerator, the morgue of UCSF for the weekend, because it was a Friday. And we told them, no, we're not leaving her here like that. Like, you know, even though it was her body and her soul was gone, it was just still to fathom the thought of thinking of just leaving her there like that when we've been with her every step of the way. So we called Dugan's, and they told us they would come pick her up. Now, leaving the hospital, they wanted to, like, well, if you want her to go through, we need to put her, you know, basically in the bag. And I said no. I carried my daughter's lifeless body. They took everybody off the floor. I carried her, and I had like tunnel vision. They told us which way to go. We had to go down to the loading dock. I carried her on my shoulders, life body, and Dugan's was there and kind of like a limo, and let her just lay in our lap, holding her all the way till we got to Dugan's, you know. And I'm grateful for them that they came and was able to let us. I felt more comfortable leaving her there where we were gonna do her services and stuff, like, instead of at the hospital around other, you know, bodies or stuff like that. And you know, it's an experience. You know, I'll never forget that. They'll always sit with me. You know, it's it's something that brings sadness, but then you look at the journey of awareness that we brought. it brings happiness, but I would turn it all away to have my daughter back. So, that's just a little, even though it was a lot about Juliana. One thing her nurses and doctors always said is that she had an old soul. It seemed like she was here before. She was so bright for her age. The way she talked and communicated, she would tell certain nurses she knew what she didn't like. Don't do that. So we would have to take her blood pressure, her temperature. Like, it's crazy. Like, how many nurses and doctors related to her. Like, they had to change their board of which ones she liked. She knew if she had a new one in there, she would like, no, and we were like, well, is it so and so here? So they would have to shift because she knew what she liked, and they were just shocked at how well she communicated of what she liked and what she didn't, and who she wanted and who she didn't.
That's yeah. I really appreciate you sharing. Like, obviously it's still very raw and something that you've been experiencing since she passed. And as I was here over the last 10 years plus, it's something that I always remember, especially around this time of year. And it's one of the things that our council wanted to do for this year is to highlight the things that the city is doing for the community. And this remains one of the traditions that I always remember. So I think it's, as long as I'm here, as long as you're here, it's something that, I want to make sure continues to happen, because what your family went through, unfortunately other families are going to go through or have been through. So that's actually a question I have is, as you and your family were experiencing this, you're relying on friends and family to support you. Were there organizations that were able to provide you with some support?
We met a lot of families in there that became more than friends, that became family. And the sad thing about it, the families that we met, every single one of them lost their child as well. A couple of them to neuroblastoma, one to Wilms, and one to glioblastoma, brain cancer. Not one of the families we met, their child survived, which is horrific. So we all have so they would give us programs, let us know about programs that would help. But what, one thing they don't help with is rent, your bills, stuff like that. Juliana's bone marrow transplant was $1.4 million. Now, we didn't have to pay it all, but we still had to pay some of that. I won't go into how much we paid, but every time it's sad, because you think of back in the days when people wanted to be doctors, it was to help people, to better people. Now it's a business for profit. You see, like, when we got the bills of them just taking her temperature, our blood pressure. She had to get her blood pressure taken 4 to 6 times a day. Each time that was $40 to $60 just to take her blood pressure. And most of the time, me and her mom were doing it, and they were still charging us, which is insane. But when you got that bill for a bone marrow transplant, $1.4 million, it's like, how do families survive? How do they survive? And we were lucky enough that we didn't have another kid at home, because if we had another kid at home, how do families do this? Most people, they end up packing up and, they get to stay at the Ronald McDonald House, but that doesn't put money. You got to do fundraisers. You got to, we had a few fundraisers. My mom worked at the Garden Club at the time. We did a fundraiser there. The Elks Lodge did a fundraiser for us. So we were lucky for that people like stepped up and did fundraisers, donated items so people could bid on them, and raffles. We did a lot of 50-50 raffles. And one of Juliana's godfathers, he did a place in the Mission. They did a big like pig cookout and charged and gave us the proceeds, and so that kind of kept us afloat. It derails you. It'll basically make you homeless. But what are you going to do? That's your loved one. You have to do whatever you can in your power to try to save them. And there was no there was no turning back from that. When I was I'm still at FedEx, I was working there, and when I told him what happened with my daughter, you know, the HR person was like, "Well, can't your wife just stay with her?" And you still, and I was like, "Do you not understand? I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow's not promised. I don't know what's going to happen." And I said, if you have to, I said, fire me. I said, because I'm not going to come in. I said, I would rather be with my daughter. And this was at the beginning. I didn't know the outcome was going to be what the outcome was. I was like, do what you have to do. And I think when I stood my ground and did that, she was like, no, it's okay. I just was thinking, you could work and she could be with her. But it's just like, it's funny when you work for corporations like that. You find out you're just an employee number. You could be replaced tomorrow easily. And you learn that. But they stood by me, and they also did it's a thing called Purple Promise. During that year of retreatment, they gave me the Purple Promise. It was like a $5,000 check to help. So I was very grateful for them, and I was out for two and a half years, and they kept my job still. And that same HR lady who said that to me at the beginning, she was on her way out, and she wanted to make sure that before she left, because they were actually buying her out, she was like, I want to make sure before I leave, Jesus, that you still have a position in this company. So she's the one who actually got me back into where she called around to, because one of my old senior managers was at a different location. She was like, I'm trying to get Jesus back in. You know what I mean? It's his time is coming up to come back. And he was like, send him over. Because he came to my funeral, my daughter's funeral too. And so he knew. So he took me with open arms. So, even though she said that at the beginning, at the end, she's the one who was able to place me right back into my job. And, so, the funding from people around you, that helps. But if you don't have that, you don't, what are you going to do? There's a lot of families that don't have that support from their community or from friends and family. Everybody's just getting by now. It's so hard, especially here in the Bay Area, but then when you go to rural countries too, that's what, and excuse my language, is killing the kids. They don't have the money or the treatments and stuff like that. It's all money based driven, to survive, to get a cure, or, so I'm grateful for like the community around here that's stepped up and helped and for having medical. That was a big thing too, was having medical, even though we still had to pay a pretty chunk. But, and there's families that don't have medical that get this, and it's just bill after bill. It's devastating. And I feel so bad for families that have to go through this, because they don't know what to do when your only thought in your mind is your child, survival, so yeah. But I was proud of that, and that the community stepped up a little bit like that. But, we were just getting by as well like that. But what can you do? You can't, there's nothing else you could do when your focus is just your child. I there's no way I could have stepped away and like, I'm gonna go work a job or work two jobs, because I didn't know what was gonna happen. That's the thing with childhood cancer. You don't know what's gonna happen. Any day it could take a turn for the worse, and you don't ever want to look back and like, why weren't you there? You decided to work instead of being there, or you decide, I never wanted to live with that burden of, you decided to go work 10 hours a day and then pop in the hospital for 1 hour, 2 hours, and then leave. No. And as a parent, you don't ever want that burden on you if something happens to your kid. So, yeah.
I'm curious, since, gosh, you said it was 2012?
When she passed away, yes.
So it's been 12 years.
Yes.
Since that time, have people approached you that are basically going through the same thing that you went through and asking you for, I guess, your life experience, the things that you went through, and helping them kind of navigate the medical system?
Well, we did afterwards, because we started our foundation, Juliana's Journey Foundation, and we did a lot of philanthropy work. And a lot of like donating to the hospital. So we spoke to a lot of parents. We would do a Christmas drive, come bring toys for found out how many kids were on the pediatric oncology floor. We would do stockings for them and toys and go around and hand it to them. And also through our foundation, we raised over $25,000. We did a $25,000 donation to UCSF to their pediatric cancer research team for neuroblastoma. We did a $10,000 donation as well to them. But as parents, yes, there is a few parents that reached out to us, to Patricia, asking how to navigate. Patricia would send them to certain other foundations to let them know how or she would walk them through treatments. She went on a board called the COG board, and she would sit with doctors from different hospitals, and she was a parent advocate to where they could reach out to her for research for parents that didn't know how to navigate through it, like you said. And she was on that board for a while. I think she just came off of it like 2 years ago, but she would go to LA to do the conferences with them, and a lot of parents would reach out to her or reach out to me. And it's funny, I also met another family here in South San Francisco. The young boy's name was Jordan, and he passed away a few years ago. And I actually met them up at the tree one year, and they were up there because they knew what the tree meant and knew it was for Juliana. And they just lost him, and they were up there with their family, and I spoke to them, and we hugged, we cried, and just they weren't asking for a donation, they were just asking how do you do it. And it sit with me seeing another family go through it, because you don't know what to do after you lose your child. You don't know how life is gonna be, what to expect. So I spoke to them. I still follow his mom. Me and his mom follow each other on Instagram. And I, just out of my heart, I don't know why, sometimes people think money fixes things and stuff like that. I was up there and I just gave him $100 like donation. It was like, here, just, I don't do what you have to do with it. It's nothing. It's just a gesture of, I don't know why when you're in that situation, people think that helps, but I was giving him my comfort. It wasn't just, here, take this, but I was, and I reach out to his mom, sometimes. It's still, always comment on when she posts about him. And, I was going to tell her this year, but one of my goals this year, one of these coming up years, is with this tree lighting, when we light it, is to invite her, to come say a word, about her son. And, cause they were from South City too, come say a word about her son and just what he meant, and, looking up at that tree and stuff like that. So, we really did have a lot of parents reach out, on the board. And, that navigates with your pain too. When you you're helping someone else, when you're telling them like, this is what's going to happen, expect it. It's like, even though you went through it, it helps with your grieving that you're helping someone else. And you're hoping that with your help, they get a different outcome than what you got. That's one of the things I always looked at about help and about awareness. You're hoping now that somebody gets a different outcome from what you got, and with your words or with trying to lead them somewhere. And if it happens, that helps with your grief, because you're not doing it for yourself. We're doing it for Juliana, and when you can help someone, we're doing it in the name of Juliana. And that's what keeps her alive. And that's what keeps her story going. I'm not patting my back. I'm giving her a high five in heaven, like, hey, this for you, this is what we're doing it for.
I'm gonna I want to thank you for joining me, and it's
no problem.
It's
I'm glad you invited me here. This is nice to get it out to the people of our city. Some remember, some don't. And it's like I was saying at the tree lighting, people still, why is the tree lit? Why is the tree lit?
Yeah.
And if we have time, I'll piggyback to how we got the tree lit, because I jumped around that, I think.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Well, when we lived on Magnolia, Juliana was going through her treatment, and we had a what's the couch sectional, but then had a chase at the end of it. Well, the chase, she made it into her little bed right there, and that's where she wanted to sleep. But the window ahead of her, you could see Sign Hill Mountain where the tree was, and it was during Christmas time, and she would always wait till it went off at midnight. We're like, you need to go to sleep, but she would wait. And she coined the name. She called it Light Tree. No, I gotta see Light Tree. I gotta see Light Tree. And even when the fog would cover it, I could still see it, Dad. I could still see it. Like, no, you can't see it. But she coined it. And after she passed, we were like, what can we do in our city to recognize Juliana and recognize Childhood Cancer Awareness Month? Because September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And we were thinking, and then we're like, man, she loved that tree. She loved that tree. And we're like, I wonder if we could do it. So we started reaching out. My uncle reached out to some people that he knew on the board. And, you know, it took a good, I want to say a good year and a half, you know, to get the wheels rolling on it. And when we got that call, like, we're going to light it in the middle of September of 2014, we're like, are you? Like, yeah, we're going to light it. And, you know, they went with white bulbs first, but from far away, it still looks gold. And the reason gold, I haven't explained it, is, you know, gold is a precious metal and our children are precious. So that's the color of the ribbon for September for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month is gold. And, you know, it's like I said, it started from her just staring out that window out and how much she loved it. And she called it Light Tree. And when the city said they would do it, it was like, wow, because that tree has never been lit for anything else. Only for the 100th centennial year it was lit. It was always for Christmas time, for the holidays, and for the 100-year centennial. They always had that 100 all year. Nobody has ever gotten it to change. And I think Juliana was so well known in this city that, you know, everybody called her, people I didn't know, our princess warrior. There were so many people that reached out during her battle, you know, because Everything South City also pushed her story a lot. You know, they're a big community page in our community. A lot of people get their news and stuff from Everything South City. And, you know, so when we got it lit, we're thinking, okay, we did it for September, you know, and from there we're like, can we get this going each year? Can we go bigger? So from there, we are the first people, me and Patricia and our foundation, that got Sacramento to write a resolution to make California go gold in the year of 2014. They never went gold for childhood cancer awareness before. We were the first one. We went up on the state capitol floor, and they gave us the proclamation of, we were with Jerry Hill. He invited us up there, and we're in his office, and then we went on the floor, and they all voted for it, and they went gold in California for childhood cancer. We're the first ones ever to have California go gold for it, and it was a beautiful. So we're like, how can we keep doing this? Then the following year, you know, we asked again, can we have the tree lit? You know, this time at the beginning, you know, so we could have the whole month of September. And they said yes, you know, and it's just been a beautiful thing, because at some point, all these other foundations we follow, they were always asking people, try to get your biggest landmark to go gold, even if it's just for one day. And that's the thing. A lot of these other places, they just do it for one day, but our city does it for the whole month. And that right there is so beautiful, because you could see it coming from 280, 101, when you're at the airport, on a plane, taking off. When I'm watching the news, Channel 5, they always do the weather, and they always show SFO, and in the background, you just see that gold tree shining on the hill. And that just, you know, to my heart, to my family's heart that sees it, it's just, Juliana, you know, and that sparks people ask, why is that there? And that's when you could tell the story. That's when you could spread awareness. You know, it's beautiful. I'm so taken back that here we are 11 years later, and it's still being lit every year for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month and for Juliana. And it's not even that, it's hope for other people, families. I've been contacted by other families, not just kids going through it, but adults. Like, saying they see it shining, and they look at it as hope for themselves. I had friends call, like, they were driving from 280 that don't even live here, like, I see your daughter's tree, because it shines bright. And it's just like I said, I always think it's a beacon of hope. If anybody, not even just cancer, just looking up at it, knowing what that tree resembles, the soul of Juliana, the toughness, the fight in her, the smile she always had. It brings you back to focus. Like, if you want to give up, just look at that tree and just remember what it represents, and it brings life and hope into you. There's times, I just stare at it. My son, he knows that, every time I look at it, like I said, that thing, I always blow it 3, I call besitos, and rub my nose, because that's what I used to give Juliana, and then throw it another one. And then just the other day ago, he asked me again, like, Dad, why do you always do that? I said, you know why? I said, I do the same thing to you. I said, but because it's like when I see the tree lit, I'm saying hi to your sister. It's for her. It's for that. And he's like, oh yeah. He was like, but you always do it. I said, yeah. It's a habit. I've grown to do it every time I see it lit. Because when I walk up the stairs to my place, it's just right there. I can see it. It's just so beautiful. So it's it's a beacon of hope that I see throughout this city. And for one of this big landmarks, with that hill and that being lit, for them to do this, like I said, for 11 straight years, 30 days out of the month, and even more, because we try to accommodate people for the holiday weekend, so we get it lit. It's just astounding. I love it every year. I look forward to it. Like, Marie has been such a big help in advocating to help me get this lit every year or two. I reach out to her, and she contacts me like, yep, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And it's just, I don't have no doubt that the city's going to do it, but there's always, you never know when it comes to funding and it comes to things like that. You never know if someone's going to say no. But, people that are on the city council now, I've got their word. Vice Mayor Flores is coming in. He goes, we'll be doing the same thing next year, when he's mayor. So that means a lot. And I've had the support of the whole city council, even new people coming on. So that really means a lot to know that in the future, this tree is still going to be lit in the name of Childhood Cancer Awareness Month and in the name of Juliana. I was explaining to Julius, my son, the other day ago, I was like, I said, if we don't find a cure yet, I said, when Daddy's gone, I said, you're the one who's going to have to get that tree lit for your sister and for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And he was looking at me like, do I? I said, it's not going to be that difficult. But I was explaining to him, I said, you're going to have to follow in Daddy's footsteps to give people hope. And he was like, okay, Dad, but I was just telling him that, I don't plan on going anywhere for at least 30 to 40 more years. Knock on wood, yeah.
I wanted to close with something you said. You said it towards the beginning. You said it at the tree lighting. And I'm going to paraphrase it, but it comes better from you. You said, people die when they physically pass away. And what is the rest of it?
Yeah, this saying, I don't remember where I read it or where I saw it, but it sat with me. It sat with me ever since. People die twice. They die physically. That's the first time dying. And then they die again when nobody remembers them. That's your second time dying. And when I read that, I was like, it's true. When people forget about you, when it's been years or your family's gone, you die again. You disappear because there's nobody here to talk about you. And when I read that, I was like, Juliana hasn't died again. She hasn't. And nor do I plan on that in the future. She has lived. She's lived through that tree. She's lived through my words. She's lived through her mom's words. She's alive through the stranger's words that tell somebody what that tree is lit for. She lives through the city council, through the mayor that says her name every time someone says her name. She's alive. But that's the worst feeling, is when people stop talking about you because you're gone. And my goal is, like I made her that promise the day she passed away, is no one's going to forget you. You're going to be remembered. You're going to be remembered for that tree being lit. You're going to be remembered for your fight, for your courageousness. you're gonna be remembered as long as I'm alive, as long as your brother's here, because you know he's raised that he knows what happened to his sister. You know, he's 5. He doesn't get the outcome aspect of it yet. You know, never really told him like the story, but just he knows she's in heaven, and but she gets talked about a lot, and not only during September. You know, we talk about we advocate for childhood cancer awareness throughout the whole year. It's not just September, but September is big. Is the big focus on it. You know, because that's obviously the month of it. But you know that saying is just it sits big with me. And after I heard that, it even pushed me even further. Like, no, her memory is gonna stay alive. You know, it's she's. I'm not gonna allow her to pass away a second time. If you get what I mean from that saying. You know, people die twice in their life, once physically and once when they're forgotten and not remembered. So my plan is to keep doing what we're doing every year, keep speaking her name, and keep keeping her memory alive. There's no ways, you know. There's the only thing I would still speak about her, but the only thing that would stop that, like I said at the city council meeting, is I can't wait till that tree does go dark. When that tree goes dark, that means we found a cure for childhood cancer. When we stop lighting that tree, is mean that kids stop getting cancer, that they found cures, that the treatments have gotten better, that the survival rate is 100%, you know, 90 to 100%. You know, there's another thing, like I'm piggybacking to the survival rate because, like I said over there, you know, they consider survival rate if you last 5 years. That's Juliana would have been 8 years old then when she passed away, and they would have considered her a survivor. The math they do off these kids, they're losing 70 years of life, of the average age of death of kids passing away from childhood cancer. That is not acceptable at all. These kids are our future. They're our precious metal. That's why it's gold. And this is what we need to change. We need more funding. They only get 4% of the United States funding. There's $6.2 billion to the National Cancer Institution. And childhood cancer only gets $250 million of it. That is nothing. That's pennies on dollar. There's only 35 childhood cancer drugs, and 29 of them are adults. So there's only been like 6 designated just for childhood cancer. They're doing the same treatments me and you would do on their little bodies, which is it's horrible. You know, it breaks them down. Most of these kids, I won't say all, but most of them end up developing a secondary cancer down the line because of the treatments they did as a kid. Most of them can't grow up to have families because the cancer killed the reproductive parts, or killed, you know, their cells to reproduce and all that. That was one thing that Juliana, she was already losing part of her hearing from a certain chemo, and they told her she probably wouldn't be able to have any babies when she grew up. On top of that, she might have got a secondary cancer. You know, we need to change all that. You know, these kids are already suffering enough now when they're going through it, and if they survive, they got to worry about this happening again when they get older. You know, there's a lot of change we still have to do, but by having this tree lit, by having City Hall go gold, by having the whole city council and the city behind you, that's a start. You know, that's a start. You know, we've you know, sometimes I wish the media would get behind it, because when South City first went gold for the tree, we sent out press releases, emails to the news like, hey, South San Francisco's iconic lamp, the tree right above the sign hill is getting lit. And we only, I think it was Kron or NBC came and just did like a short segment until last year, 22, when ABC decided to do the localish story. You know, that was big, because she told me how syndicated it was, that it wouldn't just only air locally, it would be all over the internet. Like she said, someone in Miami could see it, someone in Chicago could see it. And you know, that segment, I still to this day, I think is so beautiful, because they got all my tattoos of that for my daughter. You know, because all these right here are all for my daughter. You know, me on my arm, I have her name across my chest. Like, you know, like this one is her last hospital band. that I got done. She loved Phineas and Ferb. This is Perry the Platypus. I got this when she was doing chemo one time, and put Juliana, my hero, on it. And these are actually her handprints after she passed away. They gave us paint to put her hand on, and if you could see in I don't know if it's this hand, but this one too, it's a shape of a heart, which is crazy because that's how we got her handprint. It was a shape of a heart, and I put "Daddy loves you, Sita," because that was her nickname. We called her Sita for Mama Sita, Juliana Sita. So yeah, these are her handprints and stuff. So it's all dedicated to her. And so when ABC did that segment, they did a great job, and I was honored that Mark Nogales and Flora Nichols, they could have just did the story on the tree about Christmas, but they told them to come talk to me. Like, I'm so honored for them to even think about me and my family, to get Juliana's story out there, and what that tree means to my family and to the community. I'll forever be grateful to the city for doing that, for having the thought to do this for Juliana and for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Like, people don't understand that it's hard to get organizations, companies, people to back childhood cancer because there's no money there. And nothing against breast cancer. That's where the money is. The corporations, the company want to get behind it because they know they can make money off of it, profit. And, I'm glad they're doing that, but I wish we could focus like that for kids. There's enough businesses and companies to go around to do that for the kids, And like I said, for this city to stand behind it, it really means a lot to me and my family. And I'm very, very proud to be from South San Francisco. You would never hear me say a bad word about, because this city has, if anything, has been one of Juliana's soldiers to have our backs and to advocate for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month year in and year out. And for that, the city will always have my love.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us and really sharing your story and further promoting childhood cancer awareness, and especially for sharing your daughter's journey with us. And we want to end in her honor and dedicate this to her, to Juliana. And again, thank you for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me tell a part of my life, part of my story, part of my heart. It feels good to talk about her, and this is another reason. And I thank you very much for inviting me to this. And this is dedicated to Juliana. All the work we do is always dedicated to Juliana. I love you, mamas. Give you my 3 besitos, nose rub, another besito. I love you, mama.